The wind howled through the dark forest like a cry from another world. The moon hid behind thick clouds, letting only thin silver light touch the ground. It was a night most people in the village would not dare to leave their homes. But a small girl named Alara, only 8 years old, walked alone along the muddy path, calling out softly, "Shadow, where are you, boy?" Her little voice trembled in the cold air. Her dog, Shadow, had run into the woods after a rabbit, and she couldn't let him be alone. She held a small lantern, its light shaking with her every step, making tall shadows dance around her. The deeper she went, the quieter it became. No frogs, no birds, not even the sound of crickets. Only the rustle of the trees and her small footsteps. The silence felt alive, like something was listening. The villagers had always told her to stay away from the forest at night. They said it was cursed. They said the alpha vampire lived there, a creature who ruled the night and fed on the blood of men and beasts. But Alara never believed old stories. She thought they were just tales to scare children. Tonight, she was about to learn that every story starts with truth. Suddenly, a low growl came from behind her. She turned fast, lifting her lantern. A pair of golden eyes stared back. Not her dog's eyes. These were larger, closer, and filled with hunger. Wolves. 3 of them, thin and wild, creeping closer with sharp teeth showing. Alara froze, her heart beating loud in her chest. She wanted to run, but her legs refused to move. One of the wolves jumped forward, and before she could scream, a shadow moved faster than sight. A dark blur crashed into the wolf, tossing it aside like a broken doll. The other 2 stepped back, growling at the shape now standing between them and the girl. The figure was tall and thin, his long coat black as night. His hair was pale, almost silver, and his eyes, glowing red, looked like burning coals. The wolves whimpered and backed away before vanishing into the dark. For a moment, Alara stood frozen. She wanted to thank him, but no sound came out. The man turned to her slowly. His voice was deep and calm. "Why are you here, little one?" he asked. I was looking for my dog," she whispered. "You should not be in this forest after dark," he said. "It is not kind to the living." Alara swallowed hard, still staring at him. His skin was pale like marble, and his face looked both young and ancient at the same time. His eyes softened when he saw her tears. "Are you going to hurt me?" she asked quietly. "No," he said after a pause. "Not you." He stepped closer, and for a second she saw something in his eyes, sadness. A deep, endless sadness that felt older than time. He picked up her fallen lantern and placed it gently back in her hands. "Go home," he said softly. "This place remembers blood too easily." Alara looked up at him. "You saved me," she said. "Thank you." He didn't answer. The wind blew his coat, and the scent of rain filled the air. "You're not human, are you?" she asked suddenly. Her voice was small but steady. His red eyes flashed once. "No," he replied simply. She should have been scared, but she wasn't. Something about him felt familiar, like a dream she once had. He looked lonely, so very lonely. She took a small step closer, her lantern glowing softly on her face. "You look sad," she said. "Why are you alone here?" He looked away toward the trees. "Because I made choices long ago that can't be undone." Alara frowned. "That's sad. Maybe you need a friend." He gave a small, surprised smile, the first in centuries. "A friend," he repeated. "Yes," she said proudly. "When I grow up, I'll come back. I'll be your friend. And you can bite me then, okay?" The vampire froze. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not with fear, but with innocence. For a moment, he forgot the darkness around them. He forgot the hunger inside him. Her words touched something deep, something he thought was lost. Slowly, he kneeled so his eyes met hers. "Do you know what that means, little one?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, but I mean it." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Then I will wait for you." Before she could reply, lightning split the sky. When she blinked, he was gone. Only the wind moved through the trees. Alara stood alone, her heart still racing, but strangely calm. She felt like she had met a dream. In her hand, she noticed a mark burned lightly into the handle of her lantern. A symbol of a wolf with red eyes. She didn't understand it, but she felt it meant something important. When she returned home, her parents were waiting, crying and angry. They scolded her for going into the forest. An old woman from the village came to comfort her mother, but when she saw the mark on the lantern, her face turned pale. She whispered, "The Alpha has marked her." From that night on, strange things began to happen. The dogs in the village howled at the forest every midnight. Shadows moved across Alara's window when the moon was full, and sometimes, when she was alone, she heard a calm voice in her dreams saying, "I will wait for you." Years passed, and the memory of that night became a story she told herself to sleep. But the mark on her lantern never faded. Neither did the feeling that someone was always watching from the dark woods. The villagers stopped talking when she walked by. Some said she was cursed, others said she was chosen. Alara didn't know what to believe. She only knew one thing for sure. The night she met the man with red eyes, her life had changed forever. Far away, deep in the heart of the forest, under the ruins of an ancient castle, the alpha vampire sat alone on a stone throne. The storm still raged outside, but he didn't move. In his hand, he held a single white flower, one that had withered centuries ago. His mind replayed the sound of her small voice saying, "When I grow up, I'll come back." Lucian, the alpha, closed his eyes and whispered into the dark, "I will wait, little one, until the stars fade." The forest went silent again. Only the echo of his promise drifted through the night like a forgotten prayer. 16 years had passed since that stormy night in the forest. The small village of Raven Hollow had changed with time, but the fear in people's hearts was still the same. The forest was still dark and quiet, the same tall trees whispering secrets that no one dared to hear. The stories of the alpha vampire had not died. In fact, they had grown stronger, passed down in low voices around firelight as warnings to the children. They said the alpha vampire still watched the village from the shadows, waiting for something or someone. That someone was Alara. Now 24, Alara had returned home after her parents' death. She stood at the edge of the village, looking at the old house she once lived in. The wooden walls were covered with ivy, the windows fogged and cold. The wind carried the smell of rain and pine, the same scent she remembered from her childhood. Her eyes softened with memories, laughter, warmth, her mother's voice. But behind all of it, there was a strange feeling, a whisper from long ago that told her she was being watched. Alara was no longer the scared little girl who ran through the woods. She had grown into a calm and thoughtful woman, with deep gray eyes and long dark hair. But sometimes, when the night was too quiet, she still dreamed of red eyes shining through the darkness. She would wake up with her heart pounding, the same phrase echoing in her mind, "I will wait for you." She tried to tell herself it was just a dream, just a story she made up as a child. But the dreams kept coming, every full moon without fail. That evening, after unpacking her things, she walked to the attic to look through her parents' old boxes. Dust filled the air, and the wooden floor creaked under her feet. In one of the boxes, she found an old lantern, the same one from that night. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. The metal was cold, and the mark of the wolf with red eyes was still carved on the handle. It hadn't faded, not even a little. Alara stared at it for a long time, the memory rushing back like a flood. The forest, the wolves, the pale man with red eyes, his voice, calm, deep, and almost gentle. "Then I will wait for you." She sat down and whispered to herself, "He was real, wasn't he?" Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. Later that night, the rain began to fall softly against her window. Alara sat near the fire, reading an old book, trying not to think about the forest. But something felt wrong. The room felt colder. The fire flickered as if a breeze had passed through, even though all the windows were closed. She lifted her head, her eyes narrowing. The sound of the rain was no longer soft. It was louder, heavier, like footsteps. She stood up slowly, her heart beating faster. "Hello?" she called. No answer. She turned toward the window and froze. A shadow stood outside, just beyond the glass. It wasn't moving. It was tall, thin, and completely still. The rain fell through it like it wasn't even there. Alara stepped closer, her breath shaking. For a second, lightning flashed across the sky, and she saw him. The same pale face, the same red eyes glowing faintly through the rain. Her breath caught in her throat. She blinked, and he was gone. Only the reflection of the trees remained. Alara stepped back, whispering to herself, "No! It can't be." The clock struck midnight. The fire suddenly dimmed. The air grew colder again. Then, a voice, low and deep, spoke from the darkness behind her. "You kept me waiting, little one." Alara spun around. He was standing there, inside the room, as if the shadows themselves had opened to let him in. His black coat was soaked from the rain. His silver hair fell across his forehead, and his red eyes glowed like embers. He looked exactly the same as before. 16 years hadn't changed him at all. Alara couldn't speak. Her mind was trying to believe what her eyes were seeing. He smiled faintly. "You've grown," he said softly. "But your scent, your heartbeat, I would know it anywhere." She stepped back, her voice trembling. You're real." Lucian, the alpha vampire, nodded slowly. "Did you think I wouldn't be?" Alara's eyes filled with confusion. "Why are you here?" He looked at her for a long moment. "You made a promise," he said, "and I've come to collect it." Her blood ran cold. "That was just a child's words. I didn't mean it." Lucian tilted his head slightly. "Words have power, Alara, especially when they're spoken under the moon, with a heart that truly believes." "I was a child," she shouted. "I didn't understand." His expression softened, almost sad. "And yet, I waited. 16 winters. 16 lonely years. The bond cannot be broken." Alara shook her head, stepping farther away. "No, I don't believe you." He smiled, slow and quiet. "You don't have to believe me. Your soul already remembers." Lightning flashed again. For a brief second, she saw something strange. A red mark glowing faintly at the base of her neck, shaped like the same wolf symbol from her lantern. She gasped and touched it, but it faded as the light died. Lucian's eyes followed her hand. "It has awakened," he whispered. "The mark of our promise." Alara felt her knees weaken. She didn't know if she was afraid or drawn to him. There was something about his voice, dark, gentle, and ancient, that pulled her closer even when her mind screamed to run. He took one step forward, but his gaze remained calm. "Do not fear me, Alara. If I wanted to harm you, I would have done so long ago." "Then why are you here?" she asked again. "To protect what is mine," he said quietly. Before she could speak again, a loud crash came from outside. Something hit the door hard enough to shake the walls. Lucian's eyes turned sharp, glowing brighter. "They found you already," he murmured. "Who?" she asked in panic. He looked toward the window, his expression suddenly fierce. "Hunters." Before Alara could move, the candles blew out. The house fell into darkness. Lucian turned toward her and said in a low voice, "Stay behind me, little one. The night has only begun." Thunder roared across the sky as shadows crawled around them. Outside something moved, fast and not human, and Alara realized her nightmare was only just beginning. The wooden door shook again, louder this time. Dust fell from the ceiling as Alara stumbled back, clutching the edge of a chair. The storm outside had turned wild, wind screaming through the cracks. Lucian stood between her and the door, his red eyes glowing brighter than before. His calm voice turned sharp, almost like a command. "Stay behind me." Before Alara could ask anything, the door burst open. 3 figures in black coats stormed inside, carrying long metal weapons that glowed faint blue in the dark. Their eyes were cold and full of hate. The man in front shouted, "Lucian, by the order of the Hunters Guild, your time ends tonight." Lucian didn't move. He simply turned his head toward them, his voice low and dangerous. "You should not have come here." One of the hunters raised his weapon. It looked like a crossbow made of silver, and fired. The bolt flew fast, glowing as it cut through the air. Alara gasped, but before it could hit him, Lucien vanished into a blur. The bolt hit the wall behind where he had been standing. In the same heartbeat, one hunter screamed as Lucien appeared behind him, moving faster than any human I could follow. The man dropped to the floor, unconscious, before he even saw what happened. Alara couldn't believe what she was seeing. The man who had once seemed gentle now moved like a shadow, silent and deadly. His every step was smooth, like a predator born of the night. Another hunter shouted, "He's protecting her. The girl has the mark." Lucien's eyes flashed crimson. "She is under my protection," he said, his voice deep like thunder. They fired again. Blue light filled the room. Alara ducked down, covering her head. The smell of smoke and silver filled the air. When she looked up again, Lucien stood in front of her, one arm raised. A glowing barrier of red energy surrounding them both. The hunters looked shocked. Their weapons dimmed, useless. Lucien stepped forward, his voice calm again. "Leave now. I will not warn you twice." The leader spat on the floor. "You think you can protect her forever? The bond will kill her. It always does." Lucien's jaw tightened. "Not this time." The hunters hesitated, then backed away slowly, dragging their fallen comrade. One of them pointed at Alara and hissed, "She carries the curse of blood. When it awakens, she'll beg us to end her." Then they were gone, swallowed by the storm. Silence filled the house once again. Only the crackle of the dying fire and Alara's quick breaths broke it. She looked up at Lucien. His eyes had lost their glow, his face calm again, but his shirt was torn near his shoulder. Dark blood, thicker than human blood, stained the fabric. "You're hurt," she said softly. He looked at the wound and then at her, as if it didn't matter. "It will heal," he said. Alara stepped closer. "Those men, who are they?" "Hunters," Lucien answered. "They hunt what they fear. For centuries, they have chased me, believing my blood is cursed. But now they've found you too." "Me?" she asked in shock. "Why me?" He turned his head slightly. "Because of the promise." Alara frowned, still trying to understand. "That night, I was just a child. I said something silly. I didn't mean." He interrupted gently. "You meant it more than you think." He looked away for a moment, his expression unreadable. "When you spoke those words, your heart was pure. You made a promise under the moon. My kind doesn't take such words lightly. In that moment, our fates were tied." Alara shook her head. "That's impossible. It was just words." Lucien smiled faintly. "Words are power, Alara, especially when spoken with truth." She stepped back, confused, scared, yet somehow drawn closer to him. "So what does that mean? Am I cursed?" He walked toward the window, looking out into the storm. "No, you're bound to me, a bond that connects life and blood. When you returned here, the bond awakened again. That's why the hunters came. They can sense it. They fear what they don't understand." Alara hugged herself, trying to stop her hands from shaking. "So, I'm like you now." Lucien turned and looked at her with those glowing eyes. "Not yet," he said quietly. "But the bond is growing stronger. And soon you will start to feel it." "What do you mean, feel it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You'll hear whispers at night," he said. "Your dreams will change. The forest will call your name." Alara felt a chill run through her. "What happens then?" Lucien walked closer, his voice softening. "Then you must decide if you will keep the promise or break it." She looked up at him. "And if I break it?" His eyes turned sad. "Then one of us will die." Alara's heart skipped a beat. She didn't know if he was threatening her or warning her. She wanted to ask more, but before she could speak, the fire suddenly flickered and went out. The room sank into darkness again. Lucien's head turned sharply toward the window. His senses caught something, a presence. The hunters were gone. But something else had entered the forest. Something older. He murmured under his breath. They are not the only ones watching. Alara stepped closer, fear in her eyes. What is it? Lucien didn't answer. He just whispered, You must trust me. Why should I? She asked, her voice cracking. He turned to her fully now, and for the first time, she saw pain behind his calm eyes. Because if you don't, you won't survive what's coming. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. A human and a creature of the night, bound by something neither could fully understand. The storm roared louder, the wind howled through the cracks of the old house, and thunder shook the ground. Then, without another word, Lucien moved toward the door. Pack your things, he said. You cannot stay here. It's not safe anymore. Alara hesitated. Where are we going? He looked back at her with a faint smile. To the place where our story began. Her breath caught. The forest. Lucien nodded once. The forest never forgets a promise. And with that, he stepped into the rain. Alara stood there for a moment, trembling. Her heart filled with fear and something else she couldn't name. She looked at the lantern on the table, the old one with the wolf mark. Its light flickered once, though no fire burned inside it. Outside, Lucien waited in the storm, his red eyes glowing faintly through the rain. He whispered to himself, almost like a vow, This time I will not lose her. And deep within the dark forest, something ancient stirred. Something that had been sleeping for centuries, now awakened by the bond of a promise made long ago. The rain poured harder as Alara followed Lucien into the dark forest. The path was slippery, the night filled with mist and cold air. Her lantern swung in her hand, its small light cutting through the fog. Lucien walked ahead, silent, his coat fluttering like black wings behind him. The trees seemed alive, whispering secrets she couldn't understand. Every step felt heavier, like the forest itself was watching her. Where are we going? Alara finally asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Lucien didn't turn. Somewhere they can't find you. Who? The hunters. Yes, he said. But there's something worse than them. Alara frowned, breathing fast. Worse than men trying to kill us? Lucien stopped walking and looked back at her. His red eyes glowed faintly in the rain. Yes, he said quietly. Something that hunts even them. Alara opened her mouth to speak again. But before she could, the sound of branches snapping echoed through the trees. She froze. Lucien raised his hand, signaling her to stay quiet. The forest fell still. Then, out of the mist, a glowing arrow shot past her face and struck a tree. It hissed like fire against the bark. Lucien grabbed her arm and pulled her behind him. They found us, he said under his breath. 3 hunters appeared between the trees, their weapons glowing blue. One of them shouted, You can't run forever, vampire. Lucien's eyes turned bright red. I don't run, he said coldly. Before the hunters could fire again, Lucien moved, faster than lightning. He grabbed the first hunter and threw him against a tree. The second fired a glowing arrow, but Lucien caught it midair and snapped it in two. The third hunter charged with a silver blade, but Lucien turned, his hand striking the man's chest and sending him flying backward into the mud. Alara stood frozen, her heart racing. The sound of rain, thunder, and shouts filled the forest. Lucien fought like a shadow, silent, graceful, and unstoppable. But when the last hunter fell, Lucien staggered. A silver arrow was stuck deep in his side, glowing with blue fire. He fell to one knee, his breath heavy. Lucien! Alara ran to him, kneeling beside him. The smell of burned flesh filled the air. His blood was dark red, almost black. We have to pull it out, she said, reaching for the arrow. Don't, he growled softly. It's silver. It burns. Then what should I do? She asked, tears mixing with rain. Lucien looked up at her with pain in his eyes. It must be neutralized with blood. She stared at him, not understanding. What? He took a shaky breath. Your blood, Alara. Only your blood can stop the poison. Alara hesitated, fear flooding her chest. You mean you want me to? Trust me, he whispered, his voice weak. If I die, they'll come for you next. Her hands trembled. She didn't know what to do. Every part of her wanted to run, but something deep inside told her she couldn't let him die. Not him. Not after everything. She picked up a small dagger from one of the fallen hunters. The rain washed over its silver blade. She looked into Lucien's eyes. Will it hurt? For you, yes, he said softly. For me, it will save my life. Alara took a deep breath and cut her palm. A small line of blood ran down her hand, bright and warm against the cold rain. She placed her palm against the wound on his chest. The moment her blood touched his skin, the air crackled. Red light spread from her hand, wrapping around them both. Lucien gasped, his eyes flashing brighter. The blue fire from the silver arrow died instantly. The wound began to heal, but Alara felt something strange. Her heart pounded faster, her vision blurred. Images flashed before her eyes. Strange places, old castles, faces she didn't know. She saw herself in another time, another life, standing beside Lucien under a red moon. Then it was gone. She pulled her hand back, breathing hard. The cut on her palm had healed completely, leaving no scar. Lucien stood slowly, his wound gone, his strength returned. He looked at her, awe in his eyes. You did it, he said softly. Your blood. It's powerful. Alara stepped back, shaking her head. What was that? What did I see? He walked closer, his tone gentle. Memories. Not just yours, ours. She stared at him. What do you mean, ours? Lucien's gaze held hers, deep and endless. We have met before, Alara. Not just once, many times. You are reborn again and again, and each time you find me. Alara's breath caught. That's impossible. He smiled sadly. I thought so too once, but every life you return to me. Every time you make the same promise. She shook her head, stepping away. No, I'm not her. I'm not whoever she was. Lucien reached out, gently taking her hand. You are. The bond wouldn't exist if you weren't. Alara looked down at their hands. His skin was cold, but she could feel something burning beneath it. Something alive. Why me? She whispered. Why does this keep happening? Lucien looked away, his eyes full of sorrow. Because I was cursed, and you are my cure. Before Alara could ask what he meant, the sound of distant howls echoed through the forest. But these weren't wolves. They were deeper, darker, something older. Lucien turned his head, his expression changing. They've awakened, he whispered. Who? Alara asked, her voice trembling. The ones who bound me, he said. The true hunters, the ones who created the curse. The ground trembled slightly under their feet. The trees seemed to bend toward the sound. Lucien looked at Alara, his voice firm now. We must reach the castle ruins before sunrise. Only there can I protect you. Alara swallowed hard. And if we don't? He looked into her eyes. Then they'll take you. And this time, I won't be able to bring you back. She nodded slowly, fear in her chest but trust beginning to grow. Lucien turned and started walking again, the forest opening before him like it knew who he was. Alara followed close behind, clutching the old lantern in her hands. Its mark glowed faint red, just like the bond between them. And far above, through the thick storm clouds, the moon broke through for just a second, shining blood red over the forest. Lucien looked up at it and whispered under his breath, the blood pact is sealed. And from that moment, neither of them would ever be the same again. The forest was silent except for the sound of their footsteps. Rain had stopped, leaving behind a silver mist that clung to the ground. The air smelled of wet earth and old magic. Lucien walked ahead, every movement quiet, controlled. Alara followed close, her lantern glowing softly. Each step brought them deeper into the woods, toward the ancient ruins he had spoken of. They finally reached a clearing where the trees opened like a circle. In the center stood a stone castle, broken and covered in vines. Its tall towers had crumbled long ago, but the walls still stood proud, whispering of forgotten centuries. Alara stared at it, her heart heavy. This place, I've seen it before, she said quietly. Lucian turned his head slightly. In your dreams? She nodded slowly. Yes, I used to dream of it as a child. I thought it wasn't real. It was real, Lucian said, walking toward the entrance. This was my home. And once, it was yours too. Alara's steps faltered. What do you mean? Lucian didn't answer at first. He stopped at the doorway and ran his fingers over the old stones, tracing the cracks like they were memories. Long ago, before your first life began, you lived here. You were human, like you are now, kind, brave, full of light. I was a creature cursed by blood. You saw me when others ran away. You spoke to me when others feared. You promised me your heart when I believed I had none. Alara's throat tightened. And what happened? Lucian looked into the distance, eyes dim with memory. The hunters found us. They said our bond was unnatural. They said love between a vampire and a mortal was a sin against life itself. So they destroyed everything. He closed his eyes, his voice softer now. You died in my arms that night. You told me not to forget you, and I never did. But your soul didn't vanish. It returned again and again. Every time you were reborn, I could feel it. The same heartbeat, the same light. And every lifetime, you find me. Alara felt her knees weaken. She stepped back, shaking her head. No, that can't be true. It is, Lucian said. You are the reason I still walk this earth. Tears welled in her eyes. But why me? Why do I keep coming back? Because our promise was never broken, he said softly. It bound your soul to mine. You said you would return when I was alone. And you always do. Alara turned away, trying to breathe. Her mind felt heavy, full of faces and flashes she didn't understand. A girl in a white dress, a blood-red moon, a burning castle, Lucian holding her as everything turned to ash. She touched her forehead. I saw this when I gave you my blood. The memories. Lucian nodded. That was your past calling to you. Alara turned toward him, her voice trembling. Then why do I feel like something is wrong? Like something's missing? Lucian's face darkened. Because this life is different. This time, the curse has changed. He walked toward her, the red glow of his eyes softer now. The bond that kept us together is now killing you. Alara froze. What? He nodded slowly. The hunter's magic infected the bond. Every time your heart beats faster, it strengthens the curse. The power that saved me in the forest is slowly draining your life. She stared at him, her lips trembling. You mean, I'm dying? Lucian lowered his gaze. If the bond stays as it is, yes. Before the next full moon. Alara's breath caught. Then we have to break it. He looked up at her sharply. You can't. Why not? She cried. Because breaking it will destroy one of us. Only one can live after the bond is broken. If you live, I die. If I live, you will fade forever. Alara backed away, tears mixing with the mist. No. There has to be another way. Lucian stepped forward, his voice filled with quiet sadness. I have searched for centuries, Alara. There is no other way. The bond was sealed by your promise and by my curse. It was made with love, and love is the strongest kind of magic. Alara shook her head violently. I won't let you die. You waited all this time for me. There must be something we can do. Lucian smiled faintly. Even now, your heart is the same. You still want to save me. He walked closer, his voice soft like the night wind. There might be one way, but it is dangerous. Alara looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. Tell me. He hesitated. To save you, I would have to give you my life, my blood, my soul. You would become like me. Her breath stopped. You mean, I would become a vampire? Lucian nodded slowly. It would stop the curse. You would live forever as I do. But you would lose your humanity, your warmth, your light. You would never see the sun again. Alara took a step back. The choice was crushing her chest. And if I refuse? He looked at her quietly. Then when the full moon rises, your heart will stop. The bond will claim what it's owed. Alara turned away, shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. This isn't fair, she whispered. Why does it have to be me? Lucien's voice was low, filled with regret. Because you were the only one who ever saw me as more than a monster. The silence stretched between them. The mist around the ruins began to glow faintly red, as if the forest itself was listening. Finally, Alara turned toward him. If I do this, if I become like you, will I remember who I was? Lucien walked closer, his expression soft. You will remember what matters, the promise. He reached out, his cold hand brushing against her cheek. You once said I could bite you when you grew up. You have grown, Alara. The choice is now yours. Her heart beat faster. She looked into his eyes, those endless red eyes that had waited lifetimes for her. Fear and love fought inside her like two storms. Before she could speak, a loud sound shook the ground. The walls of the old castle trembled. From the forest came a deep, inhuman growl that echoed like thunder. Lucien turned sharply. His eyes glowed bright again. They've found us. Alara looked toward the trees. Dark shapes moved through the mist, tall, fast, unnatural. Lucien grabbed her arm, pulling her close. It's too soon. They're here for the bond. What are they? She gasped. The true hunters, he said. The ones who cursed me. The ground cracked beneath their feet as shadows rushed toward them. Lucien pushed her behind him. Whatever happens, don't let them touch you. Alara's voice broke. Lucien! He turned once, his eyes burning with fire and sadness. If this is the end, remember what you promised. And before she could answer, the darkness swallowed them both. The forest exploded with sound and light. The hunters emerged from the mist. Not men, but shadows shaped like men. Their eyes glowed silver, their weapons made of light and fire. The air around them burned with power. Lucien stood between them and Alara, his red eyes bright as blood. Stay behind me, he said, his voice calm even as the ground shook. Alara clutched the lantern tight. Its faint red glow trembled in her hand. Lucien, you can't fight them all. I've fought them before, he said quietly. But this time, I'm not fighting for myself. The first hunter raised a spear that glowed like lightning. The curse must end tonight, vampire. The bond cannot continue. Lucien smiled faintly. Then you'll have to end me first. The hunter struck, and chaos broke loose. Lucien moved like a storm, faster than sight. The spear missed by inches as he leapt forward, his claws slashing through air and shadow. Light and darkness collided with a sound like thunder. The trees burst into flame, then turned to ash. Alara fell to the ground, covering her ears. The noise was deafening, the light blinding. She could feel the bond pulsing inside her chest, every beat of her heart echoing Lucien's pain. Through the blur of smoke and fire, she saw him fall to one knee, silver fire burning across his shoulder. The hunters closed in, their blades raised high. Something inside her broke. Stop! She screamed, her voice echoing through the forest. The hunters froze. The lantern in her hand glowed brighter, brighter than the moon. Red light burst from it, wrapping around Alara like wings. Lucien looked up, eyes wide. Alara, no! But it was too late. The bond had awakened. The air turned red, and her eyes began to glow. She stood tall, her hair flowing in the wind that came from nowhere. The ground cracked beneath her feet as power flooded out of her. Old, ancient, unstoppable. The hunters stumbled back, shouting words in a forgotten tongue. But the light swallowed them whole, one by one, until their shapes dissolved into ash and mist. The storm faded. The forest went silent again. Alara stood in the center of the ruin, trembling. The red glow around her began to fade. She looked down, her hands were pale, her veins glowing faintly. Lucien crawled to her, his face full of both awe and fear. What have you done? She looked at him weakly. I didn't mean to. It just happened. Lucian reached for her, holding her arms. You used the bond's full power. You destroyed the curse. Alara looked into his eyes. Then it's over? He shook his head slowly. It's never over. You burned your soul to save mine. She blinked, confused. What do you mean? Lucian's voice broke. You've taken my curse into yourself. You can't stay human anymore. Her breath caught. You mean I'm... He nodded softly. Like me. Tears filled her eyes, but there was no pain, only a strange calm. Her reflection in his eyes no longer showed warmth or fear. Her heart was silent, her skin pale as moonlight. I don't feel anything, she whispered. Lucian brushed a strand of hair from her face. You will, in time. The silence grew between them, heavy but peaceful. The curse was broken, but something deeper had replaced it. Alara looked around. The forest was quiet again, the castle ruins still and lifeless. The lantern she had carried for years now lay cracked, its light gone forever. What happens now? She asked softly. Lucian stood slowly, offering his hand. Now we leave this place. There's nothing left for us here. She hesitated. And if they come again? He looked up at the red moon. They won't. You are not the hunted anymore. Alara took his hand. Their fingers touched. Cold meeting cold, and yet it felt right, like two pieces of a promise finally fitting together. They walked through the ruins, side by side. The moonlight followed them, red and haunting, until they disappeared into the mist. Hours passed. The forest returned to silence. But where they once stood, something strange remained. A faint red glow in the soil, like blood that refused to fade. And far away, in a hidden chamber beneath the castle ruins, a shadow moved. A man in silver armor opened his eyes. His voice was a whisper that carried through the stones. It has begun again, he said. The cycle repeats. He turned toward a wall covered in symbols. At its center was a drawing, a woman with glowing eyes standing beside a vampire. Underneath, carved in old letters, were the words, "The promise never dies." The scene faded to black, but just before the end, a single sound echoed through the forest, a heartbeat, slow, deep, then another, and another. The story wasn't over. They thought the curse had ended, but some promises are stronger than death itself. Coming soon, the next chapter, The Queen of Blood and Shadows.